adjuncts to vitrectomy surgery, mainly focusing on illumination, wide-angle viewing, as well as stains. Visualization is key for surgery within the eye, and I think the past few doctors who have been speaking in all the past talks that we've had this morning has tried to emphasize that it's crucial to be able to visualize what we want to see and enable the surgical maneuvers that we want to do within the eye. You need a good light source, a good viewing system, and if there's certain maneuvers that you want to do, you may be able to use certain techniques or tools to enhance your visualization and performance. So let's look at illumination first. You've got endo-illumination as well as microscope illumination. Most of us will do the surface work with microscope illumination. There are microscopes that will enable you to use microscope illumination to perform the vitrectomy, like the TopCon office. They have a slit function, a slit beam function that will allow you to do that, but it's not as easy as it sounds. So most of us would actually rely on endo-illumination. Originally, the light sources were halogen. You get a nice yellow tint towards when we trained, that was what we were comfortable with. But as we moved from larger gauge surgery from 20 to 23, 25, and 27, the halogen light source no longer was able to provide adequate illumination. So we have moved to xenon as well as mercury vapor light sources. So the xenon light illumination can come either as a standalone or as part of the vitrectomy system. So you've got different brands available: Photon Synergetics, the Alcon family, the B&L series, DOC, but there's also the risk of possible retinal phototoxicity because of the spectrum of light, the wavelength of the xenon light, and there is theoretically phototoxicity to the aphakic human eye. And so because of that, we have to use a lot of filters to try to cut off in that range, the ultraviolet as well as the blue light, to reduce the chances of phototoxicity. You can also then, because you insert filters, you can change the illumination to try to either for surgeon's comfort, surgeon's preference, or to enable you to see certain structures within the eye more comfortably. You can make it a bit more yellow, a bit more white. Mercury vapor has two spectral outputs, mainly in the green and yellow zone. It's supposed to be less dazzling, so it's more comfortable to the surgeon and gives better contrast when you use membrane blue dyes. You get it under Photon Synergetics or Stellaris, which has a dual independent lamp, xenon as well as mercury vapor. In terms of the tips of the endo-illuminator, originally we had standard light fibers that are focal, and last time when we used to use the Accurus, we used to call it the bullet light source. And then we now have it wider angle to have more than 100-degree field of view. There are beveled sheaths and all sorts of tips to try to improve the diffuse illumination and to reduce glare, especially when you're doing wet fluid air exchange. With smaller gauge surgery, you want to be able to do more bimanual techniques and to not compromise in terms of illumination. We've got chandelier systems now. Depending on what company you use or what machine you use, if there are single fiber as well as dual fiber chandeliers, they're all self-retaining. They may come with or without a trocar cannula system. You usually insert it vertically and aim it in the direction or area of the retina that you want to work on, and you can even reposition, you can bend the tips to change the direction. And so it has enabled the working distance. Previously you have to go, if the light source you want to see better, you have to go much nearer. Now you can pull back because it's much brighter. You just have to be careful with the chandelier that in the direction that you insert it and point it, they don't create shadows, otherwise you'll be operating under a shadow. So you just have to make sure that you bend it in the correct direction, and you may have to shift the angle as you operate. There are also illuminated instruments such as the illuminated endolaser and illuminated PIC, so that you can dissect as well as do laser in greater illumination. So the Alcon, for example, the Alcon Flex Curve Laser, it's curved, it can, you can turn it, and it's got a nice bright spot around the area that you want to laser. In terms of viewing, there are the contact systems and the non-contact systems, the Lander's ring system or the self-retaining contact lens system, and then the non-contact systems, which can be inbuilt in the vitreoretinal microscope or add-ons to conventional microscopes. You can get a good panoramic view of the surgical field so that you can evaluate the pathologies much better, localize things much better, without having to turn and rotate the eyes under the prisms. Okay, so for wide-angle viewing system, there are two parts. There's the indirect ophthalmoscopic lens system, so that's really the microscope. And then you need to have a prismatic stereo inverter to allow you to see it in a proper image. The contact systems give you a fixed field of view, so depending on what magnification power of the lens you choose, then you'll see it's either a 30-degree or a wider angle or a smaller angle. The non-contact, if you zoom out, it gives you up to theoretically 130 degrees wide angle viewing. There's also the image resolution and clarity is supposed to be better with the contact system because you eliminate the interface with the air cornea. And very often if you use a contact system, you will need a very good assistant to be able to hold the lens for you without tilting the lens. So the contact lens system, you either stitch on the Lander's ring and you change the different prisms and contact lenses, or you can use the wide angle viewing system, the Claravit, the mini quads. Some of them come with self-retaining bases as well. Increasingly, more and more of us, I think, for the vitrectomy, maybe not so much for the macular work, we use the non-contact viewing system. It allows you to operate without being dependent on an assistant to hold the contact lens for you. You can view up to 130 degrees all the way out into the periphery. It allows you to switch, without having to worry about anterior segment and posterior segment illuminations and viewing systems. But the lenses can fog easily, or if your assistant, washes the cornea of the BSS tool vigorously, you can splash BSS onto the contact lens. Macular work may not be so precise. Okay, so you've got the Biome, you've got the Merlin, these are all attachments to microscopes, or the Zeiss Recite, the Topcon Office, which are inbuilt vitreoretinal surgical systems. So this is the Topcon system. You swing it down and then you focus it into the eye. So you can see it, just to show you that it fogs easily, and then you can go in to see what you want to see and do what you have to do. Okay, so after you can see all that, then you want to see other things inside the eye, especially fine membranes. So we use stains to enhance visualization to ensure that we have removed as much of the membranes as we possibly can, the complete peel, and ensure that there's tractional relief. There's triamcinolone, indocyanine green, methylene blue, and brilliant blue, and sometimes we don't even need to use any. The blue and green dyes provide the best contrast against the orangey red background. There are other companies that will make stains based on lutein and all with different color stains as well. But these, I think, are the most commonly used ones. So TA is the cheapest, it's the most readily available. It's an insoluble corticosteroid, and it provides a very nice dusting onto the gel and onto the retinal surface. Usually we inject about 0.1 to 0.3. Don't inject too much, otherwise the whole retina looks like it's covered by snow, and then you have to waste a lot of time vacuuming it off to have a better visualization. You can ensure that you have good separation of the posterior cortical vitreous, and then you can remove membranes nicely. And there's also if you leave some behind at the end of the surgery, it can also help with post-op inflammation. So this one is to show that there's some residual posterior cortical vitreous and in a high myope with a macular hole detachment, and the TA helps enhance the visualization of it as a sheet across the whole macula, and you can lift it up once you have a good grip. You can use it for epiretinal membranes, so you can just a little bit of a fine dusting on the surface. This one is with a contact lens, self-retaining contact lens. So just a little bit on the surface will do, you don't need to put too much. Okay, and similarly, you can also use it to highlight the internal limiting membrane when you want to do peel around a macular hole. Then the colored stains, indocyanine green, we know it very well because we use it in indocyanine green and geography, especially when you want to study polypoidal choroidal vasculopathy. It was the standard for macular holes, visualization, and to stain the ILM around it so that you can peel it nicely, because it has a very nice affinity to the ILM. And when you peel it, you can actually feel that the consistency of the ILM has changed with the ICG. But there were many studies that were anti-ICG for peel because of issues with toxicity. And they felt that it could persist inside the eye for a long time after surgery, and the RPE cells could be damaged. Even though, those of us who use it would argue that you're only using it for a short time and then you're flushing it out. So then it moved on to membrane blue, which was much less toxic in comparison, and had effective staining properties, as well as trypan blue. The ILM staining is not quite as good as ICG and is mainly used for ERM. It needs to be injected after fluid air exchange, or you mix it with glucose so that it becomes heavy and it would sink onto the retinal surface. But more people are now using brilliant blue, which is a combination with 4% polyethylene glycol, so that it sinks nicely onto the retinal surface and it can stain the ERM as well as the ILM. So this is very popular, especially when you want to peel the ILM, like in macular hole surgery and myopic macular problems. You can also do double staining techniques. The first stain is to make sure that you've cleared the posterior hyaloid and all the vitreous, cortical vitreous has been removed, and then you stain again to peel the underlying membrane. So membrane blue dual enables you to stain the ILM as well as the ERM. And it's a combination of trypan blue, brilliant blue, as well as the PEG. So usually as recommended, we would leave it onto the retinal surface for about a minute so that it stains adequately, and then you wash it out before you proceed with the stain. So you peel off the ERM first, and then after that you can deal with the ILM. It's useful in highly myopic eyes where the contrast is not so good. The membrane is much more easily identified after staining. But of course, you can still peel without stain, especially in significant PVR membranes. So it's not as though you need to use the stains all the time. And also, if you have a significant ERM, you may not need to actually use stains. So visualization is key. You need a good viewing system, adequate illumination, and for finer structures like membranes within the eye that you're not so sure of, you can enhance with stains and triamcinolone. Okay, any questions?
just want to ask you if you have any tips on ensuring that the chandelier system, the one with a very rigid fiber optic that you showed in your slides, we find that sometimes when it's so rigid, despite bending it, when you bend it, it tends to get in the way of your recite.
Yeah, the wire would...
Yeah, the wire would, or even when you bend it as close as possible, when you do a hook, it sort of, and when you're going to move with your recite, it sort of gets in the way sometimes. Are there any tips to make sure that you, and sometimes in certain cases it also pushes the eye a bit.
Yeah, so you need to drape it along the brow or the lids and then tape it down, I think, quite nicely, so that it doesn't loop upwards. Yeah, then it won't hit the scope. It's like even when you use the recite or the office scopes, the non-contact and the high myope, sometimes you have to angle your vitrectomy instruments, otherwise it will also hit. So you just have to get your angling correct. Okay, I think they're very hungry and have no more questions. Shall we break for lunch? Okay, so